Right, so FreeCAD, huh? You'll love this. You always want to jump in the deep end, and FreeCAD is definitely a deep dive. It's way more than just a simple drawing tool, but it's definitely worth the effort, that's for sure. It's basically like other computer design software, like AutoCAD or SolidWorks. But, and this is great, but FreeCAD is totally free, and I don't mean like a free trial. I mean completely, 100% free. Open source too. Anyone can use it, change the code, add to it, the whole shebang. What's really cool is that FreeCAD kind of reminds me of Blender. You know Blender, right? That 3D software everyone and their mom uses for animation. It's huge now, used for movies and everything. But it had really, how do I put this, humble beginnings. Yeah, it used to be a pain to use, let's be honest. You really had to want it to learn Blender. But that's kind of why it's so amazing now. The community made it what it is.
Makes you wonder, could FreeCAD be on the same path? Could it become the next Blender? From kind of niche to the top dog. So one of the things we got to wrap our heads around is this whole parametric modeling thing. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. It's actually pretty straightforward once you get it. And lucky for us, we've got our expert to walk us through it. So what is parametric modeling and why is it such a big deal in FreeCAD?
Yeah, you're right. Parametric modeling does sound kind of intimidating, but honestly, it's just designing with really, really specific instructions.
Instructions, like a recipe.
Exactly. Like, imagine you're building something with Legos. Okay. But instead of bricks, you're using specific measurements, like the length, width, radius, everything exact. You're basically telling FreeCAD exactly how to make what you want step by step.
So instead of just winging it, you're giving FreeCAD a detailed blueprint.
Yep. One article I was reading even compared it to making a sandwich. Like if you were writing out the recipe, you wouldn't just say, put some stuff between bread.
You got to be way more specific. What kind of bread? What goes in it? The details matter.
That's FreeCAD in a nutshell. It's all about precision every single step of the way, which, like anything else, has its pros and cons. And that's kind of where FreeCAD shines, that whole precision thing, especially in what we call functional design.
Functional design. So we're talking about designs that are all about, like, practicality. Not just how they look, but how they actually work, like tools and stuff.
Exactly. Think like mechanical parts, tools, even machines. Because FreeCAD is so precise, it's perfect for those kinds of design.
Okay, makes sense. So it's not just basic 3D shapes. The research I was looking at mentioned that FreeCAD can handle some pretty hardcore stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. FreeCAD can get crazy complex. You've got tools for surface modeling, even stuff like finite element analysis.
Finite element analysis, that's a mouthful.
It's usually just called FE. And basically, it lets you simulate like real-world forces on your designs.
So you can like make sure a bridge can actually hold the weight of cars without, crumbling.
Exactly. And there's more. FreeCAD even has computational fluid dynamics, or CFD, to see how like liquids and gases would interact with your design.
Wow, that's nuts. That's some next level stuff, especially for free software. Makes you think twice about those expensive design programs, huh? Speaking of, how does FreeCAD stack up to the paid options in terms of actually using it?
That's where it gets interesting. You'd be surprised. Some people actually find FreeCAD easier to use than some of the big names, especially the hotkey system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people who like using the keyboard a lot, they love it. Makes things much faster.
So it's not just about saving money. It might actually be a faster way to work, too. Huh. That reminds me of Blender again. Wasn't that known for being super keyboard heavy? Look at it now.
Exactly. And just like Blender back in the day, FreeCAD does have a bit of a learning curve. It's not going to lie, the interface can be a little clunky compared to the paid stuff.
I feel that. I've definitely clicked around on some programs and just been like, nope, not today.
Right. And because FreeCAD is all about those precise instructions, it can be kind of tough for beginners to wrap their heads around at first. It's a different way of thinking about design.
So trade-offs. More power, more flexibility, but you got to put in the time to learn the ropes. Did your research say anything about how it's being used in the real world? Is it all just hobbyists and stuff, or are there actual companies using FreeCAD?
Oh no, there are definitely businesses using it, even in places you wouldn't expect, like furniture design, where precision is super important. And because it's free, it's perfect for smaller companies or startups who don't want to shell out for those big, expensive licenses.
It's like that open source thing is a game changer.
Yeah.
Not just for people who want to learn new stuff, but for companies, too. Speaking of learning new stuff, though, there's got to be some stuff they could improve with FreeCAD, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. There's always room to make things better. One thing that kept coming up was FreeCAD's fillet tools.
Fillets?
Yeah, like those rounded edges you see on parts?
Oh, yeah, okay. I thought you were talking about some kind of fancy fish thing for a second.
Nope, not this time. But yeah, some people find those tools a little limiting, especially if you're doing something like really complex fillets.
So is it something that you think they'll improve on?
Oh, for sure. I mean, no software is perfect, right? There's
Yeah.
always going to be stuff to tweak.
True, true.
What else?
Better support for GD&T was another big one.
GD&T.
Yeah, it stands for geometric dimensioning and tolerancing.
Mhm.
Basically, it's a really specific way to describe designs, like for manufacturing and stuff.
Ah, so like making sure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to actually building the thing.
Exactly. And from what I've seen, FreeCAD could use some more advanced GDT tools, something a little more, industry standard.
So even though FreeCAD can handle the actual designing part, getting it ready for a factory to build is still kind of tricky.
Yeah, something like that. It's a work in progress, for sure. Makes sense. So we've talked about a lot. Parametric modeling, what FreeCAD's good at, not so good at, how it's being used in the real world. It's clear this thing's got potential, especially for folks who are willing to put in the time, climb that learning curve. It all comes back to that Blender thing we were talking about, how open source software, even if it starts kind of rough around the edges, it can really shake things up, give people power they wouldn't have otherwise. So who knows? Maybe FreeCAD's going to be the next big thing, the design software anyone can use to make, well, anything. And if that happens, what are you going to make? That's the real question here, isn't it? That's what gets me so pumped about FreeCAD. It's not just lines on a screen. It's potential, pure and simple, this deep dive. We made it just for you, based on what you were curious about. Hopefully, it gave you a good overview of FreeCAD, all the things it can do, and maybe even sparked some ideas of your own. Until next time, happy designing.